He's off the air before we even get going. Whiskey expert and author of a seriously comprehensive book. And it's just an amazing, the Portable Expert, the Canadian Whisky, the Portable Expert. You gotta get one of these if you are a fan of Canadian whiskeys. What I love about the fact that rye whiskey exists is that hardly ever is there anything that's, I don't know, uniquely Canadian that the rest of the world really appreciates. It's a very rare thing. And this is something that we own.
Canadian whiskey, first of all, it can only be made in Canada.
Yes.
We have the best rye grain in the world.
Yes.
We make the best rye whiskey in the world. We also make the most rye whiskey in the world.
Of course we do.
And yes, it's a real ambassador for Canada. I was talking to you about 40 Creek, how they were huge in the United States before Canadians really caught on to
this,
40 Creek. And
it was like 5 years ago or so, I would say, 5 years ago, where I first heard about 40 Creek, and friends of mine who were very big whiskey fans, most of them Crown Royal lovers, which they still are, and I am as well, started looking at this and thinking, and tasting and saying, this is something special.
What's really awesome, I talked to a lot of different distillers when I was writing the book, and all the competitors say, John Hall and his 40 Creek, they're really, opening doors for Canadian whiskey, because every whiskey he makes is great.
Is that right?
Honestly.
Because we can go through different brands, and they'll have their regular run-of-the-mill whiskey, and then they start, the special casks and the different treatments they do for whiskeys, and almost every one of the companies does this, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you get into some special whiskeys. You are a big fan of the Wiser's 18. I
love Wiser's 18-year-old. This is a whiskey that, it's J.P. Wiser's original recipe.
Okay.
I tasted, just the other day, I was tasting one that was distilled in 1949. It tastes exactly the same as the one they're making today.
Wow.
This is awesomely great whiskey.
Is it really?
It's really good.
Because I've never been a big Wiser's fan of their regular run of whiskey, but this special. Now, Scotch, everybody knows, if you get like a great Scotch, that can set you back hundreds and hundreds of dollars.
Yeah.
But not so for the Canadian whiskeys as much?
No, if you spend $65, you're getting a really, really good whiskey. You're more likely to spend in the the $40 to $45 to $55 range for the good
Is that
stuff.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's not too bad if you're a big fan.
Crown Royal is not that expensive, and I mean,
no,
it's a real good whiskey.
It is, right?
Yeah.
Good, because I feel better now, because I've always loved it. This is delicious.
Well,
this is delicious.
I'm glad
you're not wrong about that one, that's for sure.
Okay. Yeah, this is crispy. The wood in this is great. Now try this Gibson's 18-year-old.
Okay.
Very similar, but creamier. Taste the creaminess in that.
All right.
Isn't that wonderful?
Oh yeah, delicious. Right away, it feels thicker and creamier, and then it punches a little harder.
Yeah, exactly. You've got it. Well, this is a whiskey that's been around for a long time. Again, the same recipe for decades and decades on this whiskey, and they somehow managed to just maintain the quality year after year. But they only make about 3,500 bottles a year of this.
There's a lot of history of our country tied in with this these whiskeys as well, right? And this is a beautiful journey that you can go down through the book.
Well, I hope that people will get the history in the book, because it's so fascinating. But it used to be that whiskey makers paid more taxes than any other industry in Canada.
Wow.
Confederation really was funded by whiskey. Canada's a huge whiskey maker, and it's always been an exporter. So we made a lot of whiskey here, which we sold in the United States for decades and decades before Prohibition, for example.
Right.
And Goodrum and Worts were the largest taxpayer in Toronto and the largest taxpayer in Canada.
Wow.
Can you believe that?
I kind of can, because Canadians were not afraid of the drink. Now, I think there's a resurgence in interest in Canadian whiskey, and I think it's due to a very popular niche show called Mad Men.
Absolutely.
Right? And John Hamm's character drinks Canadian Club at times, but most often Crown Royal. And I imagine, I don't know if this is true or not, but I imagine there's been a spike in sales.
Yes.
South of the border.
South and north of the border. Yeah, Mad Men has helped an awful lot with bringing people's attention back to Canadian whiskey. This really has driven sales of Canadian Club especially, but also people are talking about Canadian whiskey, and at the same time the manufacturers, I think it's a happy coincidence, are starting to bring out some really nice high-end Canadian whiskeys that are just fantastic. Like this whiskey here, you can only get this in Canada.
Oh, good.
Unfortunately. but that whiskey, honestly,
this yeah, it's hot, as good as it gets almost.
As good as it gets.
Now this 40 Creek's regular run, the regular bottle you can buy in the LCBO, is unbelievably good. Like, drink it on its own, neat, no problem. Now this is a special version. We're right out of time, but I just want you to quickly describe it.
Yeah, it's a special version. Every year in September, he releases a special release, which is something that's different, something that he has worked on for the past year or so. And this year it was 40 Creek John's Private Cask, and next year he's doing a port finished whiskey.
This is my favorite out of the three. So, you may be surprised, but that's my favorite.
Good man, you've got a great palate.
All right, pick this up right here. I just did. And you'll enjoy it if you're a Canadian whiskey fan. Canadian Whisky, the portable expert, and indeed it is an exhaustive, well-researched, fantastic achievement. Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.